identity is not built into the system. Our identity is received by the body because the body has special receivers that read the environmental signals. And there's a special set of receptors on each person that reads a part of the environment that nobody else reads. It's sort of your personal broadcast stations, like consider a radio with all the stations up and down the line right there, and that each person is receiving a different station. Okay, the analogy, very quick, the body is like a television set, and the broadcast is playing through this television set. So you're watching the Bruce show right now. Yeah. Bruce is not in here. Bruce is out here playing through the show. And what becomes important about that is fundamentally when I recognized this 50 years ago, when I recognized this, oh my God, I can't die.
Welcome to another installment of Behind Greatness by Inspire. It's Luciano here speaking as your host. I want to remind you, the listener, please subscribe if you haven't already. Share with your family and friends. And also, if you feel inclined, as a regular listener knows, we are also now a charity. And if you feel so inclined to donate to our cause, by all means, just go to behindgreatness.org. And you can find exactly what to do there. In the meantime, I'm glad you're with us because we have yet another special guest. His name is Bruce Lipton. He's joining us from California. He is a cell biologist, a lecturer, and is an internationally recognized leader in bridging science and spirit. Bruce was on the faculty of the University of Wisconsin's School of Medicine and later performed groundbreaking stem cell research at Stanford University. He is the best-selling author of The Biology of Belief, The Honeymoon Effect, and co-author with Steve Byrman of Spontaneous Evolution. Bruce also received a 2009 prestigious Goi Peace Award in Japan in honor of his scientific contribution to world harmony. You can find him at brucelipton.com, spelt as pronounced, and you can also find him through there and all his social media properties, including YouTube, and he's all over YouTube. Bruce, welcome to the program.
Luciano, I am so excited to be here with you, talking with you, but more importantly, our wonderful audience out there, because these are the people that I guess I would call them cultural creatives. They're looking for answers outside of the box. And clearly the problem is there's no answers inside the box. So I'm glad they're here with us.
So you've touched upon one of the themes of our show. I keep using the word theme, is exploration. Like, we just want to explore with people who have been exploring. and you have done that. There's one thing I didn't mention before we press record, is that the first time I read about you and I heard about you, it was through it was like a 3, 4, 5 minute YouTube clip that a friend of mine sent to me via WhatsApp. And I was sitting at an airport lounge I was on a business trip, and I was reading, checking phones, and this guy is a close friend of mine. His name is Alex. He sent me this, and I listened to it, and it was just your voice. I didn't know who you were. It was just your voice. And this voice, with a very compelling argument, discussed our cellular structure, energy, vibration, how it was all interwoven. I go, this is interesting. I've never heard this before. So I tried to Google you from that clip because it didn't give your name. And it took me about 5-10 minutes. And I figured out that there was this guy named Bruce Lipton. And that brought me into a rabbit hole fast. But I'm glad he did. Because you're a source and have been a source of information for me as well. And a constant, how do you say it? When somebody uses you as a sounding board, there you go, sounding board, an idea sounding board as we navigate here, especially on this podcast. But enough about my experience with you. Let's introduce, I guess, the listener, because most listeners here may not have heard your name. What were you discovering back as a young PhD in the 70s or 80s?
In the 60s.
60s. Oh wow. I didn't figure you that old.
I was cloning stem cells back in 1967. So there's two important words there. One was stem cells, the other was cloning. And the difference, the significance of each is this. People are now recognizing the nature of stem cells. So let me give a very simple introduction, and that is this. The human body is not made out of one thing. It's made out of 50 trillion cells. The cells are the living entity. The human, by a definition, is a community of 50 trillion cells. That's what we're made out of. The point about it is that cells die every minute, and millions of cells are dying every minute. At the end of the day, hundreds of billions of your cells die. That's natural aging and dying. The important part is, well, obviously you couldn't stay alive if the cells kept dying. So there's a resource of stem cells, which are embryonic cells in all of our bodies. And these embryonic stem cells replace the dying cells every day so that we're not fading away, so to speak. I was working with stem cells. That was number one. And back in those days, there was maybe a handful of us in the world that even knew what a stem cell was. Secondly, I was cloning stem cells, and cloning is like, well, what is that? And I go, we just take one stem cell and put it in a petri dish by itself, and it divides every 10 or 12 hours. So first is 1, then 2, 4, 8, doubling. A week later, 30,000 cells in the petri dish. But the most important part of this part of the experiment is that all the cells are derived from one parent. So therefore, I have 30,000 genetically identical cells. That's the starting part. What I learned through my research and the experiment that I carried out was I created 30,000 genetically identical cells, put them into 3 different petri dishes, split them up, 10,000 in each dish. So each petri dish has 10,000 cells. They're all genetically identical. And I go, and I grow cells in a laboratory. We call it culture medium. And I go, what is culture medium? This becomes very important in a minute. And I go, culture medium is the laboratory version of blood. Cells live in the environment of the blood. So when I grow them in a tissue dish, I create the environment that they're in, which is I make the equivalent of blood in culture medium in the lab. And at the time, this is a little sidebar, this becomes important now because while I'm doing this research, I'm teaching students, and I'm teaching them something called genetic determinism, which most people still believe in. Genetic determinism is the belief that your genes determine the character, the traits of your life. And teaching that most people, genes control this and genes do this and genes turn on and off. That's what we all hear. I go, unfortunate in hindsight, looking back, I said, what was I teaching? And the answer, I was teaching victimization. I go, what do you mean? I go, people were believing that their genes that they inherited from their parents was programming their lives. So if there's cancer in the family, you can expect cancer in your life, or heart disease or diabetes or whatever. The genes, the point very clearly, as far as we know, we didn't pick the genes. If you don't like the traits, you can't change the genes. And then on top of that, we add the information that genes turn on and off by themselves. I say, conclusion of genetic determinism, we are victims of our heredity, meaning whatever genes you got, that's the program for your life. And too bad, you might have some bad genes in there. So teaching victimization. In the lab, I'm growing these cells. I have 3 different petri dishes, but they're all genetically identical cells in every dish. And then I say what? I change the chemistry of the culture medium. I change the chemistry of the blood, so to speak. And so I make 3 different versions. And in environment A, which is the culture medium A, the cells form muscle. In the second dish, with a slight variation on the culture medium B, the cells form bone. And in the third dish, all of these are genetically identical. In the third dish, with a different medium called environment C, the cells form fat cells. And it's like, all of a sudden, it's like, I've been repeating these experiments, so it's not a coincidence. I say, what's the point? And the point was this: all the cells were genetically identical. Why did one become muscle, one become bone, one become fat cells? it wasn't based on the genes. It was based on the environment in which the genes were living. And I say, so why is that relevant? Now we'll jump into the most important point. That is this. I told you that a human body is made out of 50 trillion cells. A human body is a skin-covered petri dish. Inside your body, 50 trillion cells. And they have the original culture medium called blood. And I go, significance. I go, well, the blood is controlling the fate of your cells. Whether it's in a plastic dish or a skin-covered dish, the cells are responding to the environment. Then I go, okay, I start working on this. And I go, okay, well, who's the chemist in the body? Because the chemistry of the blood determines the fate of the cells. I go, yeah, that's true. And it turns out the brain is the chemist. And I go, okay, jumping up the ladder here. And I go, the biggest and most important question now was, yes, the brain is the chemist making the culture medium that determines the fate of the cells. And I said, but what chemistry should the brain put into the blood? And all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, whatever picture you hold in your mind, the brain translates that into complementary chemistry. There's a chemistry of love. There's a chemistry of fear. There's a chemistry of anger. And I go, oh my goodness. I go, significance is this. We are controlling the chemistry of the blood. Yep. But the chemistry of the blood controls the genetics. Yep. And I go, all of a sudden I say, then we're not victims of the genes. Masters of the genes. It's our consciousness that is controlling our genetic behavior because our consciousness is translated into the chemistry of the culture medium, which in turn activates the genes. So the new science is like a 180-degree radical turn from our belief system because we're not we're not prisoners of our genes. We are masters of our genes.
Yeah, and you said in one of the last conversations I listened to that you had, you said the mind can alter the blueprint.
That's the point. And people go, what do you mean the mind? I go, the mind controls our genetics. And go, oh, that sounds so new agey. And I go, no, that's not, had nothing to do with new age. It's a hardcore science. And people talk about placebo effect. I go, yeah, for 100 years, science is recognized. I said, what is it? Well, you have an illness. The doctor says, here's the greatest new pill. This is a thing just for your illness. You buy, oh my God, this is the pill. You take the pill, you get better. And then you find out the pill was a sugar pill. And I go, then you're left with, how did the change occur? And the answer was not because of the sugar pill. It was based on your belief about the pill, the positive belief that healed you. You healed yourself with your thoughts. That's what placebo is about. And just to conclude on that, because Luciano, this is the most important part because people don't even get to that level. Here's the other level. And I go, the placebo effect is a result of positive thinking. I say, what about the consequence of negative thinking? I go, it's equally powerful in controlling your life, but it takes you in the opposite direction. Health comes from placebo. Negative thinking is called nocebo, can cause any disease, anything you can imagine, you can create by your belief. You were told you're going to get cancer. You can create cancer, even if you don't have any genes associated with cancer. Very important point. There's not even one gene that causes cancer. Cancer is caused by the environment adjusting the genetics of the cell. And all of a sudden it goes, then we're having all this cancer here. I go, because people are living out of harmony. They're not living, their brain is translating a dysfunctional world into a dysfunctional body. Simple as that.
And that's a perfect background to, I think, where I'd like for us to go in this conversation, because
Yes.
It's been enlightening and it helps explain a lot of things that have happened in my life, because obviously it comes down to the personal experience and how you can relate to them to make sense of the outer world, and then poke and prod the outer world to see what else might make sense or not sense. So we had a Ukrainian refugee on the podcast a few weeks ago. Happened to be a psychologist, had near-death experiences. And then every time she had these near-death experiences from when she was little, kind of the veil thinned out. And so she came back with, she calls them gifts, but I believe that they were always there. They're just more laid bare, I guess. So in one of the third one, I said, what did you come back with? She goes, well, I can pretty good. I'm pretty good at diagnosing what people have in their life. So diseases or what their personalities are as well. So we did a 10 or 12 minute session just on me based on my birthday. She didn't know me other than the 35 minutes prior to that. And then I gave her my birthday. That is all I gave her. And she gave some pretty, I'm going to say terrifying because they were so damn accurate. And then she said, and we don't have this in a podcast, so this is like a little bit, this is something new. She said, I'm really sorry. I'm not going to say which one it is, but one of your grandparents had really bad energy. I'm really sorry. And I know who she was talking about. I said, no, don't be sorry. It's actually correct. And I believe that this particular grandparent gave one of my parents cancer. That's the way I spoke to her. I didn't put this on the podcast. And then that brought me and that parent is my mother. And then you said something in a podcast. So I'm now relating this back to what I heard last week in one of your conversations. And you talked about love and hate, how love and hate were really more similar than they were opposite. So we talk about programs, and I want to talk about this program too, because Safia, who's a Ukrainian refugee, said you chose not to take on your grandparents' program. That's what she said to me. And so you said you learn how to break from the programs. You don't have to carry the interactions because you replay those experiences. There's no point to this. And my mom, the gentle soul that she was, always replayed those experiences, and it got her sicker and sicker.
Yeah. Yeah. The story of your mom is the story of everybody.
That's right. It's not unique. It's not unique.
No, this is the issue, is that we have two minds. And if I just backed off and I said, yes, the biology, your genetics is controlled by the mind, and everybody, the mind. And I go, well, it's not exactly accurate, because there are two minds that are interdependent. They work with each other. The two minds, the latest evolution of the mind is called the conscious mind, which is right behind your forehead here. Mm-hmm. That's connected to your personal identity, your personal life experiences, and your spirituality. The rest of the brain back here is called the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind is a hard drive that has programs in it. A lot of people say, oh, the subconscious is the evil. And I go, no, like, when did you learn how to walk? You learned how to walk before you were 2. I go, you don't ever wake up today and go, how do I walk? You just get up and you can walk without even saying I'm going to walk. You just have to have the intention to go somewhere. And the program of walking, which you got before 2, will carry you there without you ever even thinking about walking, because now it's a program. You could be over 100 years old, you're still walking. I go, that's the same program you got before you were 2. So programs come into the mind. Now, that's when I can classify them. I say, the mind is a hard drive. Is a hard drive evil? I go, no, hard drive's not evil. It's a database. The data might be evil. Nice. And I go, oh, you mean the programs that I got? And I go, yes. And I go, and now here comes the issue, because we brought it up, and it's really affected your mother, because in her conscious mind, she's the sweet, loving mother that you knew very well. But here's, monkey wrench, the whole problem, the damn world is like, oh, where's the problem? Right here, here's the problem, is that during the day, the conscious mind, which is the source of creativity, that's the one that creates, has imagination, desires, wishes. That's what you want. The conscious mind, in addition to being creative, can also think. Right? What the hell does that mean? I go, when the conscious mind is creative, it's looking out the window. This is visualizing a creation, okay? But when the conscious mind is thinking, it's looking inside. A thought is inside. Luciano, today's Tuesday here. What are you doing on Monday? And it's not written in front of you, but in a moment or two, you'll think. Mm-hmm. And I go, well, and then you're going to come up with the answer. And I go, well, when you were thinking, your conscious mind was looking inside. It wasn't looking out. And I go, so you were not paying attention to what was going on out here during the time you're thinking. I go, but let's say you were thinking when you're driving the car, and I go, oh my God, I'm thinking, I'm not looking out the windshield anymore. I'm thinking, and I go, well, apparently you can do that and not crash your car. You can drive. As a matter of fact, a simple thing that many people experience. Let's say you have a passenger in a car, you get so involved in a discussion, blah, 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 blah. Then you look out the window and then you realize you haven't paid attention to the road for the last number of minutes, but you're still there driving. Everything's going beautifully. Yeah. I go, here's the most important point. I say, 2 questions. Question 1, what was your conversation about? You go, oh, we talked about this and this and this and this and this. Question number 2. What was on the road when you were talking? And the answer is, I have no idea. And I go, so wait a second, we have a problem here. Conscious mind was not driving the car. Conscious mind was over here talking. Who the hell was driving the car? I go, subconscious mind with programs is autopilot. When the conscious mind is busy, the subconscious mind kicks in with the program. You learned how to walk. You learned how to drive a car. Subconscious mind knows how to drive a car. So every time we are thinking, then the behavior that's coming out is not coming from our creative wishes and desires. It's coming from our program, okay? And the problem is, the person who is now playing this program doesn't see even or hear or understand what they just did. Why? Their thoughts were inside, and the program was coming from subconscious, coming from the outside. This leads to the same story I've told for 40 years. You probably heard even in that episode that you listened to, Luciano, but here's the simple story, most profound. Here it is. You have a friend and you know your friend's behavior, and you happen to know your friend's parent.
Let's call him Bill. I know you like
Bill,
to call him Bill.
There you go. You know this story. Okay, so you tell your friend, hey, Bill, you're just like your dad. And then I say, back away from Bill. Because I know what Bill's going to say. Bill's going to say, how can you compare me to my dad? I'm nothing like my dad. And people laugh because they've had these experiences. I say, most profound story for everybody out there right now is this. Everybody else can see that Bill behaves like his dad. The only one who can't see it is Bill. I go, why? Because Bill got a program that he downloaded from his dad's behavior before age 7, which is part of the automatic program. And that when he's playing this program, he's playing it because the conscious mind is busy thinking. So the automatic program kicks in and he plays his dad's behavior. Problem is, Bill's not looking out the window. Bill's thinking. The program is playing. So the only one who doesn't see the program is Bill. Everybody else can see Bill behaves like his dad. And I go, the relevance, I'll conclude this because this is the conclusion, right?
Yeah.
We're all Bill. Every day, all of us, 95% is what science has recognized of the day. 95% of the day, our behavior is coming from programs in the subconscious mind that we got from other people. And it doesn't answer your wishes or desires. You don't see the program. 60% are disempowering or self-sabotaging. The conclusion is simple. You wake up in the morning, today's the day. I'm going to get healthy. I'm going to find romance. I'm going to get the greatest job. At the end of the day, you come home and go, didn't work today. And I go, why not? And here is where the monkey wrench hits. And I go, why didn't it work today? And then the answer is, well, those people interfered with me and that thing happened. And so I'm just a victim of what was going on. And then unfortunately, then the truth comes out is this. No, you were playing programs all day long that sabotage you, just like Bill was playing, and you don't see it. And if you don't see it, then you become victim. And the whole story we're trying to tell Luciano now is, no, you were creating all of that stuff, but unaware of that. All you saw was the result. You didn't see the automatic behavior that led to the conclusions that you experienced. And so it becomes really critical for us to understand. We are creators of this life. We create the good stuff. We
and
create the bad stuff.
Going back to the Bill example, couldn't that also be, couldn't it be, I'm saying this non-scientifically, obviously, the basis of the argument that the brain and the mind are two separate entities.
Oh, yeah. The brain is the equivalent of a radio,
right?
And the mind is the equivalent of the broadcast playing through the radio.
Maybe this is perfect. This is really good timing because I'm going to say, I'm going to read something that you said as well that might, that might augment this because I want to understand where we are with this.
Yeah.
So you said the subconscious is the repository of habits and the programs that undermine who you are.
Well, yes, that's also but I said there were good programs and there were bad programs. So the bad programs undermine who you are. And as we mentioned in the Bill story, when you're playing these bad programs and everybody else is experiencing them, you're the only one that doesn't see it. So you seem to be shooting yourself in the foot all day long, come home, got a bloody foot and go, who the hell did that? And don't notice the smoking gun in your own hand.
Right.
You were shooting yourself in the foot all day, but unconsciously.
I was speaking to a colleague of mine today. Her name is Helen. She's got two little kids. And we're just talking kind of metaphysical for a few minutes. And she gave an example about how she often finds herself washing dishes with the kids around and she's managing the kids, but she goes off in daydreams while she's washing dishes.
That's that's a mentation. That's a well,
she calls it meditation. It's a form of meditation. But I'm thinking maybe that could be the mind's response to doing the monotonous that the brain is helping you do to escape. So the mind is escaping, trying to find the meaning to where you are.
Yeah. What is the meditation? It disconnects you from the active things, right? Like the kids in the background. I'm disconnected from them right now. In a meditation, my consciousness is floating free. A meditation is your consciousness is not operating in here now. It's really present out here. This is the big issue that I learned that changed my entire life, of course, was that our identity is not built into the system. Our identity is received by the body because the body has special receivers that read the environmental signals. And there's a special set of receptors on each person that reads a part of the environment that nobody else reads. It's sort of your personal broadcast station. It's like consider a radio with all the stations up and down the line right there, and that each person is receiving a different station. Okay, the analogy, very quick, the body is like a television set, and the broadcast is playing through this television set. So you're watching the Bruce show right now. Yeah. Bruce is not in here. Bruce is out here playing through the show. And what becomes important about that is fundamentally when I recognized this 50 years ago, when I recognized this, oh my God, I can't die. And I go, what do you mean can't die? I go, when the television you're watching breaks, we say television is dead. And I go, yeah, totally not working, dead. I go, is the broadcast still there? And the answer, of course the broadcast is still there. Get another TV and tune it in and it's back online again. And I go, the human body is a receiver of a broadcast because each of us has a set of antennas called self-receptors, receivers of self. And the self-receptors are on the outside of the cell. So the logic, of course, is, well, then the signal of self is outside the cell, playing into the cell, which means if the cell's here or not here, the signal's always here. And so the first thing is like, oh, my God, I can't die. I'm not even in here. That's the most.
Where is Bruce's identity then? So when Bruce passes, when the body that we call Bruce passes, yeah. where is Bruce's identity? Where it's
always been. It's never been anywhere else but out here in the field. And you think, oh, okay, my consciousness is right here. And I go, there was an experiment by a friend of mine, Cleve Baxter, and he took cells out of a person's body and put them in a petri dish and moved that dish 100 miles away. And he had electrical recording of the activity of the cells in the petri dish 100 miles away. And the person who donated the cells here and he made like a split screen television. Here's the person here having an experience. And here on the other half of the screen is the electrical activity of the cells 100 miles away. Part that was amazing was when the person here had an emotional response, instantaneously 100 miles away, the cells were also engaged in a lot of electrical activity all of a sudden. And there's only one conclusion here, is the cells have antennas on them, whether they're inside my body or I take the cells out and put them in a culture dish, they still have the antennas of self. And I go, significance. And I go, the self is being broadcast on the field. Why? Because if I have the experience right here with my mind, with myself is everywhere, 100 miles away. There's cells with antennas saying, oops, Bruce just had an emotional response, and boom, they start to respond. There's the most important conclusion, that is, our identity is not localized. Our identity is the equivalent of a broadcast, like a television broadcast. And I go, well, then, the issue about it is, then you're everywhere. I go, yeah, you're everywhere. But when you're in your mind, you then anchor that vision to be right here.
I mean, that includes emotions, because nobody could explain to me how emotions exist. They just do. But emotions exist in a field. I mean, this is the best way I could say. They exist in a field that's outside of your body.
Well, they exist inside your body. These are things we learn. Okay, when we come here. Well, part of it was what we learn. I mean, especially the negative stuff is what we learn. And okay, so now wait. I only talked to you about a one-way street. Yeah. Signal from environment, me, spirit, field, quantum physics definition of field: invisible moving forces that influence the physical realm. Okay, definition of spirit: invisible moving forces that influence the physical realm. So, okay, if you don't want to talk spirit, let's just talk science.
Point made.
Quantum physics, it's an energy field. Each of us is receiving a different energy field. The part that I didn't mention is I said, oh yeah, the energy field's coming in, and that's where my consciousness is manifesting with my brain and my life experiences right here. Okay. What I didn't tell you, and that also adds to the story, is when we put wires on a person's head, it's called the electroencephalograph. I'm reading your brain activity inside your head. Okay. Well, there's a newer device called magnetoencephalograph instead of electroencephalograph. And MEG reads brain function. I go, yeah, but what's important? I go, you ready? The probe is out here. And you have to stop and say, what does that mean? And the answer is, your thoughts are not contained in your head. You are broadcasting them back to the field, okay? And so your life experiences are broadcast back to your source and changes your source to a degree. And all of a sudden the word karma says what? My life experiences are affecting my identity, because it's not a one-way street. Information's coming in, information's going back. And in addition, most important quote, Albert Einstein, I'm just going to bring you the quote. The field, the invisible energy, the field is the sole governing agency of matter. I go, what does that mean? I go, energy fields shape who we are. And all of a sudden, yeah, but the energy, who am I? You're an energy field and you're shaping your life experiences. But when you're thinking, you disconnect from, observing that field. You are now inside. And that's when the subconscious takes over, and that's life experiences from this lifetime that are influencing you.
Why do so few scientists publicly discuss these kinds of themes? Right?
Oh, I absolutely can tell you, because I dared to do that. When I was back at the university in the medical school, professor in a medical school, we never use the word spirit. That's a bad word. You don't use that. A spirit, that's a metaphysical BS belief system, metaphysical belief system. Okay. And so scientists are not permitted to use these concepts in connecting to science. They're supposed to separate physics from metaphysics. Metaphysics, all that spiritual stuff over there. Physics, that's the science that we live in right here. And I go, quantum physics brings those two together. And the idea is that we always say genes control our life, the physical reality and our physical being. And it goes, no, the genes are responding to the energy fields of the consciousness, and they're being engaged or not engaged, not because they have any ability to do that. Biggest error in the world is genes turned on and the gene turned off. I go, genes a blueprint to make proteins, which are the building blocks of this body. And I go, so it's a blueprint. I go, so yeah, what does that mean? I go into an architect's office and she's working on a blueprint. And you look at her blueprint, you say, is your blueprint on or off? She's going to look at you and go, wait, are you crazy? There's no on and off to a blueprint. I go, exactly. Genes cannot turn themselves on and off. Genes are only engaged by the consciousness of the system, which then all of a sudden, as I said, takes us from victim to mastery, because if it's my consciousness that controls my genes and I can change my consciousness, then I said, yeah, and I can change my life by changing my consciousness.
But when you say victim versus mastery, it could be loosely, I say loosely, but there is a thread to explain. And I'm about to say it, but before I say it, Vera Teisler, who is, she's an archaeologist, German archaeologist who's been living in Mexico for 35 years, specializes, and she is the leading specialist in how the ancient Mayans sacrificed human beings through heart incisions to the heart. So chest incisions, if I say that right. But the half of the discussion was about the belief, the divine belief that the Mayans had, and how that traveled through the body, that the body wasn't the center of the belief. But she said, if you're not curious as a scientist, you're just a technician.
Well, I'll tell you, it was hard for me because I was not a spiritual person for 40 plus years. I was that hard science guy you were just talking about. We don't even use the word spirit. We're not there. Yeah. And when I started looking at the cells and then, now I'm outside of the conventional world. Why? Because my research on those cultures of cells in different environments is a pioneering research in a new field called epigenetics. I was doing the research in 1967. The science of epigenetics wasn't even recognized until 1990. So I was like 23 years ahead, but that meant also I wasn't in the group anymore because I was the outsider in that group. My scientific colleagues sort of dismissed me because, he's new age weird, and the fact was the experiments were repeatable over and over and over again. So it wasn't an accident. There was a real mechanism, and that was the mechanism that led me to the cell membrane, which then led me to why are people different? I said, how do you know they're different? I say, because, Luciano, you cannot put your cells and organs into another person's body, because if you do that, their immune system will say, not self. And I go, well, wait a minute, then there must be a self, for the damn immune system had to see it. And I go, what does the immune system see? The surface of the cell. And on that surface, there are these receptors that are Bruce's receptors, Luciano's receptors, anybody out there, they have their own receptors. And therefore, if you put your cells into another person's body, your receptors don't match their receptors, their immune system will eliminate it. That's what led me to the physical nature of, well, where's the self? I said, the immune system can see it. Well, the immune system sees the molecules on the surface of the cell, and they read that, and they can tell whether the antennas of self are the same as the body, or are they, somebody else's antennas. And they're, you can't have two different drummers marching at the same time. The immune system eliminates the cells that are not in harmony with you. And yet that led to the physical thing. Oh my God. There's a physical connection between a spirit, which is now, this metaphysical concept, and it crosses over into the cell when that environmental energy field called spirit alters the protein receptor, which engages the function. And all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, this whole understanding of medicine is so wrong. And they went and did the Human Genome Project. And that's when the monkey wrench was really put into the machine, because it takes a gene, blueprint to make a protein, a building block. There are 100,000 proteins. I go, yeah. The human genome, about 20,000 genes. And all of a sudden it's like, well, that doesn't add up. I go, no, it sure as hell doesn't. And the point about it was our belief system is totally wrong. And that's why we moved from science of genetics to the science of epigenetics. And I said, they sound the same, but let me just clarify it. This cancer is under genetic control, is the belief that genes are engaging the cancer. That's genetic determinism. Mm-hmm. But I now say, today's world, I go, this cancer is under epigenetic control. What does that mean? I go, epi means above. Skin is called epidermis. I go, why? Just underneath the skin is another layer called dermis. Epi means above. So the skin is above the dermis. Oh, epidermis. And I go, so what is epigenetic control? And I say, control epi above the genes. And all of a sudden I say, oh my God, for the last 50, 60 years, people have been programmed to believe that the genes were engaging the activity of the cells, and therefore we were victims of our heredity. Now we recognize that epigenetics means that consciousness is controlling the genes. And you have the power to control your consciousness, which then means you have the power to control your genetics and your behavior. We're not victims, we're masters. And that's what the new science is all about.
Let me take a stab at something here. It's the first time I've ever mentioned this. Let's go way back. So I watched a presentation a few years ago, and then I looked into it. And there was no answer that I could find. But the presentation was about a specific structure in man-made structure, supposedly, in Luxor. It's the Wall of Fertility, I think it's called. Anyway, so it shows a couple of god heads on this etching on this wall, and one of the god heads has it was the god of fertility, and he had a phallus, and there were water droplets, or so Egyptologists have trained the world to believe that those are water droplets. But upon close scrutiny, those water droplets actually look like a microscope's vision of a spermatozoa. And this is something that existed apparently was that 5,000 or 6,000 years ago. So the question begs, of course, how do ancient Egyptians even know what a spermatozoa looks like microscopically? Like it doesn't make any sense. The reason why I mentioned this, I'm not asking you to comment on it unless you want to, but because this is just out of curiosity, it's not out of any kind of scientific exploration. Where do you believe that we were created out of nothing 100, 200,000 years ago? What do you believe in terms of our evolutionary genesis?
Well, I believe in a very simple hypothesis, okay? And the simple hypothesis is the quantum physics principle of the field is the sole governing agency of matter. There's if you really want to go, okay, here it is, folks. Here's the story, which I haven't published too much about, okay? When they make something like a computer chip, they have a piece of silicon, and then they hit it with a beam, an electrical beam, and it eats the surface, etches the surface, so you can, print things on it, okay?
We had the inventor of that on the podcast too, by the way, from California.
Who's that? The California?
Federico Fagin.
Okay,
physicist.
So
sorry, go ahead.
Now here comes an interesting story, right? Scientists, computer engineer people wanted to know what is actually happening where the beam actually touches the silicon when that etching begins. What happens with the etching? And the answer is, at the interface, it creates what is called a fractal geometry. I go, well, fractal geometry. It's a new geometry that reveals how patterns are created and replicated over and over and over again. I go, so what? So I say there's a fractal geometry. It's an energy field that is fractal. And I go, so what? Okay, step back. The Earth, consider that as the silicon. and the sun is the beam. And as the sunbeam hits the surface and the earth is spinning around, it's etching the surface. And I say, what do you mean? I say, before there was life, the atomic elements that were here were called inorganic chemistry, minerals and crystals and things like that. Inorganic, not life. But the sun, when it etches that surface, turns the inorganic chemistry into organic chemistry. That's like photosynthesis. Okay, the sunlight activates the fusion of carbon dioxide and water, not organic, and turns them into organic. Okay, so I go, oh, then for millions of years, the sun's been hitting a beam on the earth, and the earth is rotating, and the beam is strongest at the equator and then less strong as you go up to the top. And I go, well, what an interesting coincidence, because all of life vegetation is strongest at the equator. Sure. And as you go farther north, it's less and less, okay? So I go, so what? I go, you etch from inorganic, which is crystal, and you turn it into organic. But organic molecules are unique because they're mobile. Organic chemistry doesn't form crystals. It's mobile. It's moving all the time. So I say, okay, pre-etching, no organic chemistry. Etching, the sun comes down, activates the surface to create organic molecules, which now are floating free, more or less, okay? And I go, so what? Well, the universe, nature, Earth, web of life is built on fractal geometry. And I go, it's a repetitive structure that you can predict. And I go, so the significance is this. The fractal field set up by the beam called the sun sets up a fractal field. But the organic chemistry was slow in forming. So just imagine them as little particles, little like pixels, little pixels all down here. I go, but as they form, then they start to conform to the energy field and shape themselves according to the fractal geometry, which is a shaper of fields, okay? And I go, so what does this mean? I go, that it's not a coincidence that the structure of nature on this planet is fractal, is because that is the consequence of a beam etching an inorganic earth and creating an organic layer, which is the soil and all the good stuff around here and us. But it took time for the particles to assemble and over time into smaller structures, and then the bigger structures, and then the bigger structures. So I go, guess what? Creation occurred. I go, when? When the beam hit the earth, it created a field. I go, yeah, but it took evolution, the time for the particles to accumulate enough, massive enough, assemble enough to manifest the structure. And so it's like, this is the coolest thing in the world. Why? Because the creationists are arguing with the evolutionists, blah, 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 and they're mad at each other. And I go, guess what? Both occurred at the same. The field was generated by the etching, but it took time for the etched particles to assemble in to manifest the field.
So Bruce's the identity was part of that field that was created by the sun's etching.
That's right. And when we got to the level of humans with enough surface receptors to just analyze a spiritual energy, because the surface receptors read the world, what's going on, food, temperature, what the hell is going on. But there's a set of receptors that read a field that is unique to you, to every individual. And I say those receptors are translating that energy field into behavior, okay? So that we were here before our bodies were here, but through the evolution, we now have this is like a robotic device. It's receiving a signal. And then how you run it is based on your mind. But then I go, but that's the problem. The mind is the brain, and the brain is a computer. And I go, yeah, so what? I say, you can buy a brand new computer and take it home. In the old days, you push, start, and it boots up. And I say, do something. You say, no, I can't do anything. I say, why not? First, you have to put programs in, then you can use the computer. So it turns out in the human, The brain boots up in the last trimester of pregnancy. But for then until 7 years, it downloads behavior. It makes programs out of these behaviors. I said, where does it get the programs from? I say, observing the parents, the family, and the community, observing their behavior, downloading their behavior. Those are the fundamental programs. After age 7, consciousness lights up and can use the keyboard on the computer. That's where you add information to the computer, or you can just let it idle and the programmer run the computer. And the issue is we have to now recognize that our lives are not coming from the creative wishes and desires, the imagination mind. Our lives, 95% are coming from the programs. Yeah, but the programs were downloaded from other people. Do they answer your wishes or desires? If their programs don't, then you can't get to your wishes and desires. You have no program. That's the bitch. That's the bitch. And see, so your mother has a conscious mind where she's your mother and loving you and being the mother, okay? Mm-hmm. That's the mother part. But like everyone else, she also was running 95% of the day the program she downloaded from her parents. And your grandfather downloaded a dysfunctional energy that manifests as cancer. And 95% of the day, she was expressing that energy without even her knowing it because she was thinking.
So thank you for bringing it back to my mother. That was actually very good of you. You're being the interviewee and the interviewer. That's fantastic. No, but you use the word idle. So just to wrap up that point too, that you just finished off, because it's something that you like to talk about, and I'm going to mention it here because you haven't, but it would make sense when you're running on idle for the rest of your life, you are living, because you said the Matrix is really a documentary. You are living in a matrix.
Absolutely. You were programmed. The Matrix is, everybody was programmed. And go, that's not science fiction. That's a documentary. Everybody got programming between last trimester of pregnancy and 7 years. And these programs, 95% of the time, run our life. Okay. So now you're ready for this, for all my Catholic friends out there?
Cultural Catholics.
For 400 years, the Jesuits have told their followers, give me a child until it is 7, and I will show you the man. They knew what I just said scientifically. The first 7 years is programming. The rest, 95%, is that programming. And that's when they caught on. They said, my God, if we can program the kid before 7, they belong to the church for the rest of their lives. I go, that's exactly why Catholic school was created. They knew that if I can control the first 7 years, I control the character of your life. And I go, well, this is the issue, that most of the programming occurred from, even before you were born, you were getting programmed last trimester of pregnancy. Sure. You were programmed a whole year from 0 to 1. You were programmed a whole year from 1 to 2, from 1 to 2, and a year from 2 to 3. And then maybe around 4, you're going to start to remember some of the actions of the program. But you cannot tell me, what program did you get when you were 0? I go, well, you should know. You know why? 95% of your life is coming from that program. I think you should really pay attention to it. What program did you get when you were 1? What program did you get when you were 2? And all of a sudden you start to recognize your life is being controlled by programs that you don't even know what they are, because your conscious mind wasn't there when the programs were being downloaded. And all of a sudden I say, well, that becomes important, because then it says, your life is a printout of your programs, 95% coming from program. So now comes the most important little additive information here, and that is, well, if your life is a printout of your program, then here's an important point, that the things that come into your life that you like, they come in because you have a program to acknowledge them. But the things you want, desire, wish for, and you struggle, you're working hard, I'm sweating over it, I'm putting a lot of effort in, I'm going to make it. Why are you working so hard? And the answer is because whatever that destination is, the program you got in the first 7 years doesn't support it. And that's why you're working so hard. You're trying to take the 5% creative, conscious wishes mind and control the life that is 95% controlled by the program.
100%.
It's very difficult. And therefore, the sweat, the anxiety, the aggravation.
I believe all entrepreneurs, all artists go through that same thing. They don't know why they work so hard at doing what they're doing that's apart from the flock, but they're doing it. And they're doing it in spite of how they've been programmed.
Right. And where did they get their new information from? Not from the program.
From the outside.
They got it from the outside. They disconnected from the mechanism and downloaded the field. Karma and all that stuff. Your energy, my energy, everyone's energy is up here in this field. But if I can let go of my holding on to me as the individual element of this whole thing and let go, meditation, I could be out here in the field, and guess what? It's all the information, the book of knowledge of everything is out there. So only those that can get out there can see, and then those that can see can bring it back. And then all of a sudden we ended up with what? Artists, scientists, and entrepreneurs.
Well, let me ask you then. We've been talking a little bit about dreaming here on the podcast. Is dreaming a kind of a natural way out for us out of the matrix? Some conscious way out?
Well, yeah, it's an unconscious way out. In a
unconscious.
Okay, it's basically you disconnected from the machine. When you start to fall asleep, the activity of the brain, the vibrations get slower and slower, and when you fall asleep, which is you're in at that point alpha, which is calm consciousness, and you fall asleep, the next level down is called delta, which is unconscious hypnosis, in fact. So what was the point? Well, somewhere when the vibration of the brain cut off the conscious activity, conscious was free. It could go anywhere. A dream could be anything. It's imagination. You're not in here using this anymore. It's asleep. And that's why you can see the brain activity. It's like, okay, alpha is done. Right now you're in theta. You're asleep. And I say, but it doesn't mean your spirit went to sleep. It meant your body went to sleep. The brain went to sleep. The receiver of said broadcast turned off for the night.
But not you as the identity of Bruce.
No, you're free. You can be anything out there in the world. You could be any imagination, which is.
So is that a glitch? Is that a glitch in the program? Like, is that a glitch in the matrix? The fact that we can all dream, that we all dream, that we all do it.
I don't think it's a glitch at all. I think it's a doorway that if you start to recognize, well, where the hell is that coming from? It just happened. I said it didn't just happen. You are participating in something, but not with this. So I said, what's participating? I go, the field. You are a spirit. You've always been a spirit. You're still the spirit at this moment. And for me, so this program is to provide some information on my personal experience, and the personal experience that really came down to this was that instant. Listen, I was not spiritual, and then I saw the mechanism with the receptors on the cell, and oh my God, it's like, oh my God, I'm a spiritual entity.
Yeah.
And then I remember being the scientist spiritual entity at that moment, saying, well, wait, if I'm a spirit and a body, what do I need the body for? Why don't I just be the spirit?
Yeah, it's more fun.
And this is when I found I had Jewish cells. I said, how did I know? I said, I asked a question, why have both a body and a spirit? And the cells answered with a question. I asked why both, and this the cells comedian radically straight. And I go, what was? I said, why have both a spirit and a body? And the cells welled up with a question. Bruce, if you're just a spirit, what does chocolate taste like? My whole world went, oh my God. This is a device to translate the energy fields through vision, okay? Through hearing, through smell, taste, touch, pain, temperature, pressure, emotions. Uh, these are coming from the mechanism of the body brought up to the brain. And then the brain, magnetoencephalograph, broadcasts that back to the spirit. And it's like, oh my God, we came here to experience things so that our spirit, which has a vision of creativity, manifests. What do we manifest? What job do you have? Where's your life? Are you manifesting things you want, or are the programs that you got downloaded with the matrix taking you away from what you want? That's the wake-up call. And this is critical because it basically says, if I put it in the shortest summary of everything, the answer is this. A lot of people think we live our lives and if we do really well and when we die, we can go to heaven. I would like to challenge that. I say, you were born into heaven. This is where we came to create. This is the physical expression of manifestation. I can create my world with my consciousness, my wishes, and my desires. When people fall in love, that's the red pill. They get out of the program, and guess what? They created a whole new life 24 hours after they fall in love. I go, what happened? I go, their creative mind took over, and guess what? They wanted heaven on earth. What the hell do you think the honeymoon was? Heaven on earth? Sure. Because you stop playing the program when you stay conscious like that. And love is one of the generators of mindfulness, meaning if someone just showed up in your life and you've been looking for them your whole life, this is not time to think. This is time to be here and enjoy it. So we stop thinking. And I go, well, what happens when you stop thinking? I said, well, now you're not playing the program. That's the equivalent of the red pill. You're not playing the program.
Well, it's like washing those dishes and daydreaming. You're not thinking. You've let yourself go. The daydreaming is the same thing.
That's it. And so basically, it's like, oh my God, I came here to manifest a life experience. But my programs have taken me away from my destination and in place put in the societal programs that we all accept. And that controls our life. And I said, you missed why the hell you were here. You came here to create. And if you fall into the old programming, somebody else is calling the shots on that creation. That program came from somebody else, didn't come from you, the creator.
I think that kids are the constant reminder of why we're here.
Well, yeah, because we're bringing in the future. They're going to create from their consciousness.
They're natural creators.
We're all creators. That's the unfortunate part, because we've also created the mess that's out here. We're the creators. But if we understood that, and people, when they do understand this, then can say, wait, the programs I got were taking me away from my desired wish of heaven on earth. Why do I want to play those programs? I said, no, you don't. I said, what can you do? I said, you can make a new program. And that's when all of a sudden you become empowered as the creator, when you say, I want to write a new program that gives me harmony, love, and peace, just as much as a program gave me walking. I can have programs that do that. And I say, but the problem is most of us have downloaded our programs from dysfunctional people, and therefore we are perpetuating a dysfunction through our life.
Centuries after centuries.
Yes.
Last question, Bruce. I know we're running out of time. What is greatness to you?
I think greatness is recognizing what it means to be a human. I go, what does that mean? I go, well, human means humanitarian. I go, yeah, what does that mean? I said, this is a recognition of compassion, peace, harmony, love. These are why we came here. But we've been programmed out of those experiences, and especially men, because we are the bane of women. I go, what do you mean? He goes, oh, men are so insensitive. And I go, we weren't insensitive when we were born. We were as sensitive as anybody else was ever sensitive. But as we grew up, boys are programmed not to be sensitive. I remember when I was a kid, they used to punch you in the shoulder and say, hey, see if you flinch. It's like, or they'd hit you and you go, no, I didn't feel it. And inside you're going, ah! But the outside, I didn't feel that. And I go, what was the result? We as men were programmed not to be sensitive. And I go, why? And the answer is A soldier cannot be sensitive.
Mm.
If a soldier is sensitive, they wouldn't shoot somebody. So it's like, nope. So to make soldiers, the programmers, which started with the church, took away sensitivity from men, allowed women to be sensitive because they're not fighting, okay? So they could be sensitive. We're not sensitive. Why? We were programmed that we can, not be sensitive. So we don't let sensitivity interfere with whatever they want us to do. And this is a wake-up call. That's the first thing that I recognized. I thought, oh my God, we came here to experience things. That's what I said. Remember, I said the mind will translate it and send it back to source. And I go, well, I realized I'm not sensing a lot of stuff. And I realize a lot of it is because my program, the amplitude of sensitivity has been shut down. And there was a point to say, but now I'm wasting my life, because my life was to come and taste the chocolate and see the sunset and enjoy the experience of love. And I realized there's a misprogramming and that misprogramming leads to violence and war and the whole damn problem why heaven here doesn't look like heaven anymore, because the programs that we've been programmed to create from are self-destructive. And matter of fact, all you have to do is, surf the web, watch the news, look out your window, and you'll recognize this whole world is in a state of chaos and falling apart. And the reason is the programs that we were downloaded with for generations are so self-destructive that humans have precipitated what is called the sixth mass extinction of life. We've undermined the web of life and not recognizing we come from the web of life. The web of life is God, so are we. And we have been destroying the environment without even thinking about it because of corporate greed and interest and stuff like that. And it's like, this is the wake-up call. This is where we are. Today is the wake-up call. I said, just look at the world. It's in a state of chaos. And I go, significance is profound for this reason. It says, we're not sustainable. we're creating our own extinction. I say, so what does that mean? It says we have to break the structure of civilization, which is creating this problem, so that we can build a new civilization that is more in harmony with the planet and life and everything else. And so what we're in right now is seeing the crashing of the old unsustainable culture, ready to create the new one. And that's why your broadcast is so important to me. That's why I'm so excited to be here, because we're going to create a new one, but it's going to come from consciousness. And the first thing is waking up people.
Well, so two things. Number one, that is the longest answer to what is greatness and humanitarian. And it's well appreciated just the same. But you left it off on a great note, in my opinion, because I had one of your quotes circled here to end off. So maybe this is what we'll do, because consciousness, in your words, and I really like this definition too. Consciousness is the freedom to make a different action. It's the experience between a stimulus and a response. And maybe it's within that difference that we need to be more active.
That is the opportunity right there. Because otherwise our responses are just program matrix. You make a response, no thinking, very fast. But there's a time where we all of a sudden say, wait, do I really want to do that? Is that who I really want to be? Is that, well, that's the way we always do it. And I go, yeah, but who said that was good? And it's really the pause. It's funny because I think in music, they talk about the space between the beats. Is where it all comes together at some point. And I go, yeah, the space between the stimulus and you deciding on the response, the decision.
That's the key.
Is the most important part of your whole life. Are you going to decide to follow the old story, or are you going to be the pioneer and say, no, I'm going to make a different response and go here?
Bruce, I told you before we started record that I got to know your personality a little bit by listening to all your, not all, but a lot of your interviews. And you warned me, and I said, no, Bruce, I know you're a bit of a train. And it's been
Careful.
fun. No, it's been fun. The ride has been fun. It was really worth the wait. It's been over a year that we've been wanting to have you on the program, and very grateful for every Medicare. Thank you so much.
I am grateful for your patience. And I'm very grateful for your effort, because your effort is evolutionary and necessary at this time to help those people that see the crash and are so afraid because they don't see the resolution. They just see the coming down, but they have no vision of, well, where can we go? They just downhill. It's unfortunate because young people are the ones that have lost a future. And many of them just saying, well, it doesn't work. What do I care? And all of a sudden let go. And then we have a problem today of young people so disconnected from the world, because all they've been programmed with is war, violence, falling apart, greed, corporate, consumerism, all this stuff. They don't see a vision. And if you don't have a vision, you can't go anywhere. That's where the problem comes from.
Well made. Point well made, Bruce. Well, hopefully we'll make a difference, at least a little bit of a dent with this conversation once we broadcast it.
I so appreciate the opportunity of having this conversation with you, Luciano. And again, thank our audience very much.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you.
Hey, it's Enrico Colantoni here, actor, director, and dedicated napper. Like what you heard today, there's more to come. Make sure to subscribe to Behind Greatness and learn about our live events at inspirenorth.com. You'll also find links to our social media right on our website, so be sure to give us a like and follow. Until next time, stay inspired.